45% of South Africa's citrus exports are headed for the EU, but very strict conditions on the export of this fruit have been set out. So I'm joined by the Citrus Growers Association's Mr. Joubert to discuss the issue further. Thank you very much for joining us, Dion.
My pleasure. Nice to be here.
Thank you. So reports said that there was a ban on our citrus export to the EU. You say this isn't exactly the case.
The 2013 season commenced and the exports were suspended in October, and then the EU imposed their sort of ban in December. So materially it didn't have any effect. Implication was important that there was a symbolic ban, but on the 2013. So 2014 season never had a ban. The implication for the last 3-4 months, which is all the negotiation and the discussion, was principally inclined to negotiate the conditions under which South Africa would export to Europe in 2014.
So it wouldn't have any real effect on the export during that particular season?
In 2013 it had no impact. It was more a symbolic gesture, but it was important that we noticed that they put a ban on South African product, implying that regardless of what we think of black spot, if we agree or disagree that it's the seriousness of the disease. The implications is currently we have to export to the EU within their current mandate or their mandated rules or the legislation. So at the moment we need to comply with those.
Right, but let's take a step back. This was all begun because of the citrus black spot.
Yeah.
Can you explain what this is to us?
Well, principally black spot is a fungus. It's superficial, it's on the skin of the citrus. It makes a little black spot, as it says. And it's the South African view, and largely that of the scientific community, is that it is a, just superficial. It doesn't have no impact on the fruit quality, or the safety of the product, and it's cosmetic, so to speak. That view was, to a large extent, I think at a stage paralleled by the EU. They saw the same. The last 2-3 years it's changed, and they have become more strict on black spot as an entry condition for South African citrus.
But what is the EU concerned about? Can it spread, or do they just not want to look at this?
Well, I think to be fair, I think that currently there is a diversion of scientific thought. The South African and perhaps the American and some of the other scientists believe it is the fruit cannot spread the disease through the fruit, so it's not a pathway. And there are other arguments with regards to the fact that certain climates is not conducive to it establishing. That said is one aspect. So the implication is that the EU says we don't want it. We don't want fruit with that conditions. And for the moment, until we have scientific agreement on that or a ruling, this is the conditions we have to comply with. And that is where we are now with the current conditions and the more stricter conditions currently imposed and agreed upon by the EU last Tuesday.
So talk to us about these conditions. What will change?
Well, I think to South Africa over time has introduced a risk management system, or a RSM, on CBS, which has been extremely successful on 4 of the 5 commodities we deal with. That is soft citrus, grapefruit, navels, and lemons. And last year, as an example, we had 35 interceptions of black spot in the EU out of a total of about 650,000 tons, which is a huge amount of citrus. So it's theoretically small. But the implication is that on all the other commodities, we only had 2 on grapefruit. So we had 33 on Valencias, which is the late sweet orange. So on that, there seemed to be a higher risk profile. And when we started the negotiations in February and March with the EU, we tried very hard not to allow that happened in 2004 with Brazil and Argentina, that they had a total ban. This is an emergency measure, but we tried to introduce measures which we thought we could deal with and significantly impacts and deals with the risk profile. And that we did very successfully in April, and eventually it now turned out that the EU has principally accepted the South African proposal on the two measures, which is splitting the season into 2 and dealing with the Valencias, the latter part of the season, a little bit differently, more interventions and stuff, and an Ethopon test to try and measure or show black spot before we export. So those 2 has been the introduction from South Africa in April through DAFF, which assisted us and agreed principally that the measures were great. or were scientifically sound and practical. Those were introduced and presented to DG Sanco, which is their import, call it their administration or their government, the State Department, and the member states, 28 member states of the EU, then voted on that last 2 weeks ago, Tuesday and Wednesday, and principally accepted the South African proposal. So it's really good news for us. It's tough. This is emergency measures. It is not as easy as the past. But I think what is very significant is we've really established a process where we have credibility, and South Africa will govern that export process instead of having a unilateral ban or a unilateral conditions imposed on it. So I think we've come out extremely well, and it was a very significant majority voted for the South African proposal. So we've done well.
And now that these guidelines have been set out by the EU, it's great news for South Africa because, as I understand it, our citrus industry is providing a vast amount of jobs.
Oh yeah, I mean the figure's been quoted up to now is that we have 120,000 people working actively, and for their total livelihood is dependent on the citrus industry. And the ratio at the moment is something like 1 to 10, so you can multiply that. But then, so the figure being quoted is that the industry principally supplies a living life for about 1.2 million South Africans. So it's significant. It's got about, I think it's about 8 billion rand of external revenue, which 45% in your number is very near to 4 billion rand comes from the EU. So if you try and move that product away from the EU to the other markets, you'll collapse them all. So it's very, very important for South Africa to keep the EU program access open for the next 2, 3, 4 years until we get such a time we get some scientific agreement on the stature of black spot we open.
Now let's talk a little bit about those other markets. I think it's 20% going to the Middle East and 1% to Africa. Is there an opportunity to branch out into Africa more? Oh,
I believe so. Really believe so. I think that if you look at that, what happened to the apple industry as one, which I've been active before my life with the CGA, is that the African continent provides at the moment probably some of the most superb revenue consistently for apples in our world markets. They pay well. They are the conditions that are set are good, and I think generally that we are finding Africa much better a trading partner, much nearer. The trading costs and the access and the logistics are all much cheaper. So generally they do provide fantastic alternative, and I really hope that we could do so with our citrus too. Yeah.
Would you agree then that the bottom line is that we really shouldn't panic about the state of our citrus growing in South Africa?
Look, it's emphatically important that we do remain within Europe. So Europe is a very, very important market for South Africa. It provides a huge amount of foreign revenue. It is a very diverse market, takes different quality brands, different quality fruit, different sizes, and it's a natural out of season product for them. So they always say the guys who have the biggest amount of consumer and production is the same. So wine drinkers drink wine. So South Africa is a great producer of wine, also drinks wine. France the same. Europe produces a massive amount. The biggest exporter or producer in the world is Spain. So there's a huge amount of consumption of citrus in Europe during their season. In the off season, you want to have that product available on the consumer's table every day, so that he continues to eat an apple a day or citrus a day or stuff like that. So you want that continuance. So it's important for Europe too to have citrus on the table, to not have substitution, that you guy stops eating citrus, he starts eating, say, cherries as an example. So you want that continuance from a European point of view and from a South African point of view. So the grower communities in Europe and South Africa are interlinked, and their value or their importance in terms of how they view the market is the same. So we have to have the European growers do well, and I think they need South African growers to be robust and sustainable to support their market. So I wouldn't panic, but I think it's important we do retain Europe. We develop other markets as we go along. And if we can solve CBS, which I think we can grow the product. We can grow the product in Europe. We had a huge level, 650,000 tons. It's if you think 113 million cartons of citrus are exported out of South Africa every year. Take half of that, that's significant. So we're talking about, say, 50, 55 million cartons of citrus. And it's difficult to replace that. So yes, there's no panic, but it's important that we comply. It's very hard on the growers. They've been fantastic. They've supported us by withdrawing those orchards which they deemed to be risky out of the program. They've had a huge increase in spraying programs to protect the fruit against CBS. And at the moment there's huge effort and exercise on these measures to comply, to ensure that the product we have in Europe indeed is free of CBS symptoms and comply with the legislation. So I think, we can, if we do this well, we can all win.
Well, thank you so much for shedding light on the issue.
My pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.